Online grifters come in many shapes and sizes. Some sell you pseudoscientific medications and cures. Some sell you crash courses on how to get just as successful as they are. Spoiler alert, step 1 is someone like you buying their course. And some just upcharge you on cheap items that they claim are much higher quality than they actually are. Truly, the scope of ways in which one can be an online grifter is just as infinite as that of the online communities in which they can exist. Nowhere is safe from greedy capitalists exploiting ignorance for profit. Not even a community which shuns such capitalists as part of its core belief system. A community like the Frutiger Aero fandom. Think back to what technology, especially software, looked like in the early to mid-2000s, from around 2004 to 2013. Remember the Windows XP startup sequence with its bright, natural-looking Bliss wallpaper and the shiny deep blue color of the taskbar? Or, if you're a bit younger, Windows 7, with that blindingly glowing, nature-filled Windows logo set in a sleek sky blue gradient. Remember the Nintendo Wii home menu, and how clean, soft, and ethereal it felt. Maybe some of you even remember seeing concepts of futuristic utopian paradises back then, and remember how impossibly curvy, eco-friendly, and peaceful they looked. These are all classic examples of a design aesthetic the internet of the 2020s has dubbed Frutiger Aero. It's the aesthetic that the wealthiest tech companies of the early 2000s adopted in order to seem futuristic and modern. Their goal was to make it seem that this clean, bubbly paradise was the future that they hoped to see humanity actualize one day. That eventually, with their help, we'd get here. And now it's about 15 years later, and things are actually looking more like this. Frutiger Aero has made a major comeback online recently, and that's not just because members of Gen Z are looking to wrap themselves in a comfort blanket of childhood nostalgia. Certainly, that's one reason, a very big one at that, but there's more to this sudden resurgence than what meets the eye. Whether consciously or not, implicitly or explicitly, those who used this design language in the early 2000s sort of led the kids who grew up with it to believe that if we all worked together, this was the world we could achieve. Obviously, now that we're more grown up, we can clearly see that this was just never a possibility. Corporations never planned on stopping exploiting the resources that they've always been exploiting. They just really wanted to seem like they were trying to. It draws parallels to the recycling movement. You know, if we all stop throwing things out and start recycling everything, then we can solve climate change and the environment will be fixed forever. Oh, that guy taking everything out of the recycling plant and throwing it into a landfill? Don't even worry about it. As a result, Frutiger Aero has taken on a sort of double meaning in the modern era. It's not only a nostalgic symbol of childhood and innocence, it also serves as fuel for a healthy culture of skepticism towards big corporations. Just look at some of the comments on this Frutiger Aero themed playlist called The Future We Were Promised.
The disclaimer at the beginning about ads also kind of adds a stab of wistful irony to the future we were promised. Really drives home how the landscape has changed online, and how consumerism has seeped into everything to the point that it's forced. We're denied the ability to opt out anymore, as creators or the audience.
A future where love won over hatred, where justice succeeded over prejudice, and where truth banished all deceptions. A future of clean, endless energy, free to all to enjoy, one in accordance with the harmony of nature, never to harm it again.
We may not be kids anymore, the world may be a darker place, and things seem scary, but to be honest, it always was. Even though Frutiger Aero as a design language began as a corporate marketing push, it's since been essentially reclaimed by the people it once misled. The Frutiger Aero community has transformed the aesthetic from a shady, annoying, forgotten business practice into a beloved and implicitly anti-corporate icon. Independent online artists are creating a myriad of original works using the aesthetic, from songs, to videos, to digital imagery, to even entire video games. In fact, it's become so popular that it's started to bleed into the real world. Visit the Frutiger Aero subreddit and you'll find people showing off their Frutiger Aero outfits, Frutiger Aero desk setups, entire buildings that give off heavy Frutiger Aero vibes. And of course, merchandise. The Frutiger Aero community has reached a point where they're able to support each other not just with social media engagement, but also financially. Legitimate small businesses have incorporated the aesthetic with stickers, t-shirts, hats, mugs, keychains, and more, allowing their proprietors to make an income outside and in the face of the very corporate structure that once forced the aesthetic upon them. In exchange, consumers get to enjoy physical items with which they can display their community pride, and comfort themselves and anyone else who happens to look at them with nostalgic childhood imagery. And at the core of that market, and arguably the core of the Frutiger Aero community in general, is the subject of this video, a man called Skeuoss.
Overall, the biggest biggest difference with this new era of Frutiger Aero is that it used to be owned by corporations, but now this stuff is made by individuals with their own self-expression, whether that be through genuine works of art or just stupid freaking memes. Except for the people that use AI to generate Frutiger Aero stuff, it's extremely lame and lazy and goes against everything the aesthetic stands for. Stop doing that.
This is Skeuoss. He's a massive name in the Frutiger Aero community, with a combined 290,000 followers across YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. He posts almost daily across all 3 of these platforms, and runs 2 24/7 YouTube live streams on top of that, all dedicated to Frutiger Aero. Suffice to say, the man's got a lot of content, and a lot of people to watch it. He is truly the Mr. Beast of the Frutiger Aero community. That is, if Mr. Beast didn't give any of his money away, and instead just took people's money in exchange for items, like some kind of businessman or something. His real bread and butter is his website, skeuoss.net. If you've known about Skeuoss prior to his introduction in this video, even if it was just for his content, you've probably seen mentions of this website at least once or twice. He promotes it in practically everything he posts, sometimes in obvious advertisements, sometimes more subtly in the descriptions of his videos. But if you dig just a bit deeper, you'll find that skeuoss.net is much, much more than a simple YouTuber merch side hustle. In fact, it's a veritable empire of Frutiger Aero themed products. Any Frutiger Aero themed product you can imagine, Skeuoss has probably sold at some point. He's got pillows, plushies, jewelry, office supplies, lava lamps, fish lamps, night lights, jellyfish lights, figurines, gel wrist rests, colored sunglasses, mechanical keyboards, and his most popular product of all, the Skeuoss.net Aqua Mouse. Aqua Mice are generally pretty beloved by anyone interested in retro internet culture, especially the Frutiger Aero community. They're a perfect example of a relic from a time when the internet was much more fun and whimsical. The way the charms inside an Aqua Mouse jiggle around in the water when you move it is just so silly. It's like having a mini fish tank at your fingertips. Not to mention the cool glowy effect the water gets from the optical sensor when it's in a darker environment. Why we as a society decided to stop making these is something I'll never understand, but regardless, we did. And now they're all super expensive. So, in came Skeuoss to fill that void. His mouse is just $30, which is still significantly more expensive than your typical Amazon Basics mouse, but to many in the Frutiger Aero community, it's well worth it. It appears to capture the magic of actual retro Aqua Mice pretty dang well, and nails the Frutiger Aero theme to a T. The clownfish and dolphin charms are incredibly silly looking, and the blue water inside looks simply delectable. With how accessible and affordable these are compared to most genuine retro Aqua Mice, coupled with how Frutiger Aero they are, it's no wonder how much of a smash hit they were. At least, that's how it all seems at first. If you scroll down long enough on Skeuoss.net, past all the calming images, past all the interesting looking products, you'll eventually find a piece of content that seems a little different from the rest. A blog article called Addressing the Hate Based on False Claims, Scammer, AI, Dropshipping. You might be confused as to why Skuwas even felt the need to make this article, because each of these false claims it tries to address seems to be based on nothing more than a couple of Discord screenshots. Some of these hardly seem like serious allegations at all, and some aren't even complete sentences. It's a very weird article that, when I first read it, actually made me suspicious of Skuwas when I wasn't before. I had a gut feeling that there was a lot more to these claims than was made clear through this article. One Discord message shouldn't have been enough to set Skuwas off like this. I needed a much more detailed explanation of the other side of this quote-unquote Frutiger Aero drama than Skuwas was willing to give. And it didn't take very much digging to find it. In response to this article, a group of former members of Skuwas' community, known as Ali, Ash, Daith, formerly known as Sevis, Keegan, Takoni, and Zipties, composed a continuously updating 26-page document called The Skuwas Scheme. These authors are much more deeply involved with the Frutiger Aero community than I am. Half of them even had moderator privileges in Skuwas' Discord server at some point. In fact, their document addresses each claim Skuwas addressed in much more context and detail than Skuwas did. Thanks to this document, we can compare each of Skuwas' explanations with the explanations of the opposition, and parse out exactly what this apparent hatred in Skuwas' supposedly whimsical, innocent community is all about. First up, we have It's pretty obvious if you take just one look at Skeuoss's products that some of them are dropshipped. I mean, if he's just a small business owner like he claims to be, he definitely doesn't own a mouse factory or an aesthetic fish lamp factory. That in itself isn't necessarily problematic. In fact, Skeuoss claims that his method of dropshipping is actually more ethical than most, because he partners with high-quality suppliers and manufacturers to make improvements to products before selling, rather than just buying cheap crap wholesale and immediately reselling it. Specifically, he refers to his Aqua Mouse, and lists the improvements he made to the base design, which are...
Improve the design.
That's literally just the subject of this list.
Use Frutiger Aero. Colors.
Very simplistic design change.
Add more features. Bluetooth, USB-C charging, no batteries that are bad for the environment.
Followed immediately by
Add a better built-in battery. No batteries that are bad for the environment. Add 2 floaters.
tiny plastic charms like these cost just a few cents wholesale.
Design a great packaging for a great unboxing experience.
Literally every product has packaging, that's just a step of the design process.
Write a use manual in 5 languages.
Again, part of the design process for any electronic device, not something to brag about.
Include a free charging cable.
Like tiny plastic charms, those can be made for actual pennies.
Include free stickers.
Like charging cables and tiny plastic charms, stickers can cost practically nothing.
Ensure the product meets all safety standards worldwide.
If it didn't, you wouldn't be able to sell the damn thing. Now, oddly enough, despite Skeuoss's claims of quality, and despite his product's rave reviews online, he seems to get a lot of customer complaints in private. How do I know this? Because when I first decided to start making this video, I got in contact with the authors of this document. Remember, this document was written by former moderators of Skeuoss's Discord server, so during that time, they had access to any and all documents and records that Skeuoss stored on that server, which, as it turns out, was pretty much everything. Research documents, images and files used in products, job applications, customer support logs, customers' personal information, all stored on Google Drive and linked on the Skeuoss.net Discord server for anyone with high enough permissions in that server to see. So, because I'm now on friendly terms with people who've had such permissions, I've seen Skeuoss's customer support logs, and trust me when I say, they're not pretty. Aqua Mouse compartment broken. Aqua Mouse has busted LMB and RMB. Aqua Mouse has missing stopper. Literally broken Aqua Mouse. Mouse has dirt and scratches. Mouse has missing stopper again. Mouse missing cable and dongle. Mouse does not turn on. Mouse not delivered. Mouse has dirt and scratches again. Mouse got sent back to warehouse. According to the dates on these logs, these kinds of issues had to be addressed several times every few days at least. Like, Skeuoss, it doesn't make sense that you've added all these cool features to the Aqua Mouse to improve it if none of those features don't fix the fact that the base structure literally falls apart at times. These are the kinds of logs I'd expect from a massive cheap supplier that skimps on quality checking and package handling, like the sweatshops that AliExpress works with, not from a quote-unquote small business that only partners with quote-unquote quality suppliers like Skeuoss.net claims to be. And the mouse is far from Skeuoss's only product with quality issues. The logs also mention a broken aquarium lamp, a broken jellyfish lamp. The materials and stitching patterns on clothing is reportedly poor quality. A customer shared a video of a bracelet they bought with rust buildup on the metal parts. A keychain that same customer bought reportedly broke 2 days after they received it. So no, Skeuoss.net's products are not quote-unquote the highest standard of excellence, meticulously crafted to ensure superior quality and lasting reliability, as the front page of the website would have you believe. They're dangerously cheap garbage with mere cents worth of Skeuoss branding and improvements slapped onto them and then sold to customers for significantly more than they're worth. A practice that is unfortunately all too common in today's markets, but which the Frutiger Aero community is meant to stand against. Yet, for the biggest Frutiger Aero influencer around, it's his entire business model. He staunchly defends himself against people who don't consider him a real Frutiger Aero fan, but if he was, this entire store wouldn't exist. And believe it or not, it only gets worse from here. If you look at the images on Skeuoss.net with more than just a passing glance, you'll notice that many of them are pretty clearly AI generated, and he fully admits that in his section of the Debunking the Hate article addressing that. He justifies it by saying he used some special model that he trained specifically to make Frutiger Aero images, and he plans on significantly reducing his use of AI for Skeuoss.net in the future. He was known around the time this article was released for constantly spamming AI images on his social media pages, and if you scroll down through his Instagram, you can see that he actually did stop doing that. in November of 2024, 3 whole months after this article was published. In fact, the Skeuoss scheme claims that, quote, Skeuoss is a major reason why so many AI photos come up when you search Frutiger Aero on Google. Unfortunately, even though he has finally stopped posting AI images on his Skeuoss social media accounts for the most part, traces of his AI spam still persist on Google. Many of the images that come up when you search Frutiger Aero are Skeuoss's products, which still use AI backgrounds in their promotional images. Even his logo, which he puts on practically all his products, is AI generated. And let's take a closer look at those two 24/7 live streams he runs on his YouTube channel, Frutiger Aero Radio and Calm Frutiger Aero Radio. Their thumbnails and backgrounds are both clearly AI. No. Wait. As for whether or not the music he plays on them is AI, after running some songs from his live stream through detectors and talking to some people, I'm pretty sure it's actually mostly human-made. But he doesn't credit artists for the songs, which is pretty strange and scummy all the same. Not to mention, on Calm Frutiger Aero Radio, he plays pretty much the same lineup of tracks as regular Frutiger Aero Radio, but they're all quote-unquote slowed, reverb, bit crushed. It's not mentioned who made these slowed, reverbed, and bit-crushed versions of these tracks. It might just be another uncredited artist, but the fact that they're all titled the same, coupled with his track record with AI, leaves me highly suspicious that he might have some sort of AI or automated program running to do the job in seconds. Skeuoss's generative AI use doesn't stop at multimedia, though. As he admits in his Debunking the Hate post, he's no stranger to ChatGPT. He claims that all he uses it for is help with his English, as English isn't his first language. So let's run a few pieces of text from Skeuoss.net through an AI detector and see how likely that claim is to hold any water. Yeah, this goes beyond just using ChatGPT to help with one's English, I would say. On top of practically all his product descriptions, blog posts, and actual job listings being AI generated in some way, Skuwas owns another relatively popular website called Frutiger-Aero.org. How do we know he owns this site? Because he never misses the chance to make a sale. This website basically functions as a wiki about Frutiger Aero and many of its popular sub-aesthetics, and every single one of these articles uses AI language in some capacity. But hey, at least he did all the web design work himself, right? Right? What's even more appalling than that are the times when he used AI to straight up blatantly copy an artist's work. Skeuoss.net sells packs of Frutiger Aero 4K wallpapers. On his store page for these, Skeuoss has the following paragraph about intellectual property. Quote, "These wallpapers are upscaled and modified versions of original images, the rights to which are owned by the respective creators. The modifications and enhancements made to these images are the property of Skeuoss.net. Unauthorized use, reproduction, or distribution of these modified images is strictly prohibited." Because we don't know what software he used to upscale these images, we don't know for sure whether he legally has the rights to claim ownership of these modifications. But I think it's just kinda common sense that he shouldn't, right? If I was a small independent graphic designer making just a few bucks a month selling my work on a stock photo website, and someone found a preview of one of my images on that website and used AI to wipe off the watermarks and blow it up to 4K quality, and then made more money off selling that blown up image by itself and on merch than I could ever hope to get for my stock photos, I don't think I'd be very happy about that. That doesn't seem fair or ethical in the slightest. He doesn't just use these images as wallpapers either. He sells a Frutiger Aero coloring book, and guess what the original non-outline versions of these coloring book pages are?
If Frutiger Aero had emerged in 2024, it would probably involve heavy AI use due to its techno-forward spirit.
This quote displays a startling lack of understanding of the modern Frutiger Aero movement. It's not just the imagery itself, it's the spirit of taking back this once corporate aesthetic and making humanizing, thought-provoking original art out of it, which is the complete opposite of AI-generated art. Generative AI undeniably has many useful applications in our modern society, but generating images in 5 seconds and trying to pass them off as meaningful art does not. It wrecks the environment, it lets companies get away with not paying artists, it's the embodiment of the exact kind of corporate culture that the modern Frutiger Aero movement tries to fight against. If he really did train an AI model to specifically make Frutiger Aero images, that would actually be more upsetting, because that AI model would no doubt steal so many thousands of actual Frutiger Aero artists' works to make those images. This is not a good thing, and he claims that he edits his AI images to remove imperfections, but As seen by these Reddit posts he links, he does seem to have some actual design skills. These are pretty good. But then he literally claims to be the best Frutiger Aero designer in the world. I'm not even joking.
Check out one example of my work below, not AI, and you'll see I'm still a better Frutiger Aero designer than you.
I rest my case. And while we're on the topic of Skuwas stealing from artists, there's even been at least one instance of Skuwas straight up claiming another artist's work as his own. Some of you might have recognized these lovely emojis he plastered onto the thumbnail of his addressing the hate post. These are redraws of classic MSN Messenger emojis from the early 2000s, made by DeviantArt user Vladinul in April of 2020. Vladinul specifically listed them as free for use, so there's nothing wrong with Skuwas using them here. But in March of 2024, Skuwas re-uploaded these emojis to his own personal DeviantArt without a single mention of Vladinul anywhere. Again, it's technically not illegal, but common sense should tell you that's just wrong. He also might have stolen the entire concept for his Aqua Mouse from a brand called Kanaqua, who made an extremely similar mouse much earlier than Skeuoss. To paraphrase the Skuwas scheme, Kanaqua's first mention of their Aqua Mouse on TikTok was on March 25th, 2024. Skeuoss made a TikTok showcasing his own, and this is a complete and utter ripoff of Kanaqua's. He deliberately photoshopped the Aqua Mouse out of Kanaqua's video and erased their logo. Look at the outline in Skeuoss's TikTok. You can see the skin color. On April 8th, 2024, Kanaqua posted another promotional TikTok. Months later, on August 6th, 2024, Skeuoss posted on Instagram and TikTok a video with the exact same caption, copying Kanaqua. Their TikTok was taken down due to copyright. On August 20th, Kanaqua posted a blog article on why the Aqua Mouse was discontinued. Skeuoss, a week later, made an article with the same premise. It had almost the exact same format.
I may have shared some images or links to my content in the past, but only because I thought people would enjoy them, which they did. It was never intended to directly promote my business, I never made any sale from it, and I haven't done so in a long time.
Yeah, I don't even need to say anything here. The evidence speaks for itself. Skuwas promotes his stuff wherever and whenever he can. But there are plenty of people just like that out there, right? Stolen memes with descriptions promoting a new revolutionary online course are practically an entire genre of Instagram reel at this point. What does Skuwas do that makes this worth mentioning? That makes him fail to clear a bar that was already in the 7th layer of hell? Well, for one, as we've discussed, Skuwas' business model goes completely against the modern Frutiger Aero movement. And this level of promotion, this relentless onslaught of capitalism everywhere you look on Skeuoss' social media pages, makes that issue so much worse. Looking at his content as someone who does genuinely appreciate Frutiger Aero is such a surreal experience, because this level of promotion and this aesthetic are at complete odds with each other. For another thing, Skuwas tried becoming a Reddit mod. The authors of the Skuwas scheme are very well known in the Frutiger Aero community and have many connections, including mods of various subreddits for aesthetics similar to, or that are subsets of, Frutiger Aero. Ali, Ash, and Takoni are themselves moderators of r/Frutiger Aero. Because of this, we know that Skuwas, completely unprompted, asked to be a moderator in r/Helvetica Aqua, r/Frutiger Aurora, r/Vector Bloom, r/Frutiger Eco, r/Frutiger Metro, and r/Aero Gothic. r/Helvetica Aqua was the only one of these subreddits to actually accept his application, and once they did, he allegedly put promotional links in its description and then went almost completely radio silent, eventually being demoted for inactivity. Imagine being so desperate to promote your already successful business that you try hijacking a subreddit with 200 members. Skuwas' quote about having not shared images of or links to his content in a long time is his most blatant lie so far. To say that Skuwas of all people never intended to directly promote his business is like saying that Mr. Krabs isn't financially motivated.
Hello, I like money.
I don't think he could promote himself any more shamelessly if he tried, honestly. Skuwas claims that his site is fully encrypted, and then in no way elaborates on what that means to him. In computer science, encryption basically means to hide data by scrambling it and making it so that it can only be unscrambled by a digital key. It's a very standard practice used to prevent the exposing of sensitive data. So for an entire site to be quote-unquote fully encrypted, it would probably look something like this. Obviously, he's using this phrase as a shorthand, to say something to the effect of, all the private data you enter into this site is encrypted, or at least that's what he wants you to think. But because he doesn't explicitly necessarily say that, and instead says something that makes no sense, he gets to apply any meaning he wants to that nonsense phrase. And that meaning is, quite frankly, entirely BS.
I'm not sitting here typing card numbers into an Excel spreadsheet one by one, when I can simply plug a payment processor like Stripe to my store in just a few clicks.
What Skeuoss fails to mention here is that payment information is quite literally the only thing he guarantees the encryption of. To quote his own TOS, you understand that your content, not including credit card information, may be transferred unencrypted.
Leave me alone!
On top of that, from the leaked customer support archive, we can see numerous screenshots of emails and order invoices containing just all of certain customers' information, completely uncensored. There's no complete payment information here, but it's still extremely high sensitivity info, like names, addresses, personal tax numbers, and last 4 credit card numbers. None of this was stored in an encrypted database. It was all just sitting around on Google Drive. Anyone who knows anything about cybersecurity can tell you that that's a massive security risk, and completely unprofessional for any e-commerce business, big or small. This leaves Skeuoss.net and its customers comically susceptible to identity fraud attacks, which is extra concerning considering that the majority of Skeuoss' audience is minors. Because Frutiger Aero and Skeuoss himself are very popular on TikTok, which is full of young users, a significant portion of Skeuoss' community is underage. You can tell just by looking at some of the comments he gets. And because kids don't really have the capacity to fully understand what makes something or someone good or bad, they don't care about the AI. They don't care about the rampant promotion he does. They're not going to be combing through his TOS to make sure he's a trustworthy person to give money to. Most adults don't even do that. And because of that, Skeuoss has now created an extremely insecure treasure trove of children's information, just waiting to be broken into and exploited by someone. Skeuoss even addresses this in Claim 10. There are kids putting their info on the website. He doesn't even try to debunk this or offer much of a defense for it. He just links the TOS and basically says, it's out of my hands, sorry. Well, Skeuoss, that may be true according to your own rules that you made up, but that just means they're terrible rules. Morally and probably legally too, honestly, you're required to keep that information safe. For Skeuoss to knowingly not do so is definitionally unethical, and should be enough to warrant calling his entire character into question, even if none of the other claims on this list were ever made. In late 2024, Skeuoss advertised several openings of remote contractor positions at Skeuoss.net. The applications for these are still viewable to this day at skeuoss.net/jobs. We have image evidence to prove that Skeuoss was in talks with a 14-year-old to potentially hire them for one of these contractor positions. Now, it's not necessarily illegal to contract minors for freelance graphic design work, but it's definitely not a decision one should make lightly. Any minor you hire will likely by nature be inexperienced in working for pay, and unequipped to stand up for themselves, and you have to accept the responsibility of treating them fairly and making sure they know what rights they do and don't have. Skeuoss didn't do that. He asked anyone applying for his job openings to price themselves, rather than offering a fair wage up front. This shows all too clearly where Skeuoss' head was at when he was making these job applications. Using the price of someone's labor as a hiring metric is an incredibly scummy thing to do, especially if that price point was decided by a literal child who didn't even know the value of $1, much less the value of their time, effort, and talent. This isn't even the only minor he interviewed. Daith, one of the authors of the Skeuoss scheme, was 17 when they began talks with Skeuoss. They even got so far as to discuss a potential payment method, and Skeuoss, ever resourceful, offered to pay them in Amazon gift cards. Like a goddamn tech support scammer.
Do not redeem! Do not redeem the card! What?
These are just 2 of the candidates he interviewed. Imagine how many more might be out there that haven't spoken out yet. Imagine how many young, inexperienced people Skeuoss lured into working for him for an unfair wage, and they didn't even know how to speak out about it because they didn't even realize they were being manipulated. Maybe it was just these 2, but considering how many young people are in the Frutiger Aero community, I highly doubt that. With how calculated and professional-looking Skeuoss.net is on its surface, it's not hard for one to guess that this isn't Skeuoss' first go at running a business. So, what are some of Skeuoss' other business ventures? Who exactly is the man behind the Skeuoss? An important distinction that one has to make when researching Skeuoss.net is that it's not technically a company. It's a trademark owned by a shell company called Mezyan Limited, which oddly, despite Skeuoss living in Thailand, is registered to Ireland, a country that just so happens to have limited liability for LLCs. A weirdly shady move for a quote-unquote small business owner to make. You don't normally see your average mom-and-pop owned deli setting up shell corporations and moving assets offshore. Once the authors of the Skeuoss scheme realized this, they began looking online for other companies owned by Mezyan Limited, and they were not disappointed. Because Skeuoss.net was so successful, Skeuoss decided to copy his own homework. Twice. Looking at the websites mcbling.shop and obforia.com side by side with skeuoss.net reveals just how lazy Skeuoss was here. These are all pretty much the exact same website, just dedicated to different aesthetics. mcbling.shop is dedicated to the trashy early 2000s pop star aesthetic known as McBling, and obforia.com is dedicated to the early 2000s Xbox gamer kid aesthetic known as older brothercore. We've already gone over how flawed Skeuoss' understanding of Frutiger Aero is, so it shouldn't surprise you to learn that he seems to know even less about these other two aesthetics. Older brothercore and McBling are kind of similar to each other in that they're both pretty loud, rebellious, and trashy in nature. Frutiger Aero is the opposite. It's more quiet, clean, and optimistic. Despite this, Skeuoss often uses the same Frutiger Aero-esque language he uses on skeuoss.net on his other aesthetic websites. On Obforia's Instagram, for example, you can find a word-for-word replica of the promotional video he used to announce his skeuoss.net Aqua Mouse, this time used to advertise his older brothercore mouse. This mouse is sick as hell, by the way. I'm so mad that it's Skeuoss who made it. Make no mistake though, these websites and products are not genuine efforts to celebrate their respective aesthetics. They're desperate formulaic attempts from a greedy online businessman to repeat the massive success of his cash cow. If you don't believe me, maybe it's time you hear it directly from the man himself. The authors of the Skeuoss scheme found Skeuoss' real name from an FCC report. Let's call him AT. He's a self-described online entrepreneur, a Facebook ads and e-commerce expert, the owner and sole employee at Mezi Unlimited. Skeuoss.net is not run by a woman of color, as many now believe, thanks to this long-form video, which AT hired a woman of color to narrate.
You saw that one, but I'm gonna give the floor to a few more winks so you can really get the gist of what people used to send daily to their friends. I also honestly just wanted to show you a few of my favorites.
AT is very white, and even worse, very French. Googling his name brings up his personal YouTube channel, where, for a time, he posted French language videos on how to be an online entrepreneur. His most popular video is, I shit you not, an exact step-by-step tutorial on how he built Skeuoss.net.
J'ai créé un business en ligne qui me génère plus de 80 000 € par mois et que je peux revendre plus d'1 million de dollars. Le principe est simple. Tu améliores un produit existant, tu achètes un stock au tarif grossiste, ton fournisseur envoie les produits directement dans les entrepôts d'Amazon. À chaque vente, Amazon s'occupe de préparer le colis et de l'expédier au client. Tu n'as rien à faire. J'ai trouvé cette gomme épilatoire qui génère plus de 23 000 € par mois et qui a moins de 56 avis. Ce qu'il faut faire, c'est proposer une valeur ajoutée pour se différencier et satisfaire ses clients. Recherche ensuite un fournisseur sur Alibaba. Je contacte ensuite plusieurs fournisseurs pour leur demander s'ils peuvent ajouter le nom de ma marque sur le produit et une coque de protection. Ici avec lui sur la quantité de commande, par exemple 200 unités, et le prix du produit, par exemple 2 €. Prix, ici par exemple 19,99 € pour ma gomme épilatoire.
It doesn't get more soulless than that. He's literally admitting, point blank, that his business is a get-rich-quick scheme made using a plug-and-play method that anyone can use for any kind of product. Skeuoss, I'm gonna speak directly to you now if you don't mind, because I know you're probably watching. Do you want to know what happened to the future we were promised? Because it seems like you do. I mean, you named a whole album that you paid someone else to make after it. Do you really want to know what happened to the days of cleanliness and eco-friendliness everywhere? Of thought and care in UI designs? Of whimsical art anywhere people saw fit to put it? Of real self-expression and social connection between people despite living thousands of miles away? Of innovation? Of creativity? Do you really, really want to know what happened to all of that? It's people like you. Remember, not too long ago, Frutiger Aero served a very different purpose than it does now. It was a calculated tool that wealthy tech companies used to smother suspicion towards them with an air of progressiveness. It declined in popularity once people caught on, but the people who used it for that purpose never went away. People who exploit foreign slave labor, people who burn the planet by wasting all its energy, people who will manipulate anyone they can to get what they want, they're all still out there, committing worse evils than ever before, but under different disguises. All except you, Skeuoss. Your disguise is still stuck in 2008, and I'm quite frankly mortified on behalf of the entire modern Frutiger Aero community that we still let it work on us, even after all this time. But no more. I, and hopefully everyone else who watches this video, we've learned our lesson. As for you, Skeuoss, I can only hope that you take some time to seriously reflect on everything you've done up to this point. You've engrossed yourself in a community that after all this time you still don't seem to understand. You've caused untold amounts of damage to an environment you claim to want to protect. You've contributed to the ruination of an untold amount of lives that will never get to experience much of any quote-unquote promised future because they're all too busy working in sweatshops to build your Aqua Mice. If you're really curious as to what happened to the future we were promised, Skeuoss, if you really want to know where it all went wrong, the first place you should look is a mirror. Just one more quick reminder, please don't go out of your way to find and harass anyone mentioned in this video. The goal of this video is simply to get people to stop supporting Skeuoss. Any hate comments or threats you leave on his socials won't do much of anything other than making the audience of this video less respectable, which Skeuoss can use as ammo against this video later on, and boosting Skeuoss's engagement. So it's best to just not interact with him and let his remaining community slowly die on its own. I would not have been able to deliver a single piece of the information you heard in this video without the amazing work of Ali, Ash, Tokoni, Daith, Keegan, Zipties, and everyone else who contributed in any way to the Skeuoss scheme. They deserve way more credit than me for this video. All I did was compile the work they spent over a full year building into a more easily digestible format. This document deserves way more recognition than it's gotten so far, and I hope that this video will increase its attention tremendously. To that end, I also can't thank you, dear viewer, enough for sticking around to the end of the video. The longer you keep watching, the more this video gets pushed in the algorithm, so every single one of you who watches till the end, or for any amount of time really, but especially you if you're hearing this, plays an invaluable part in getting this information out there. So thank you so much. Fuck Skeuoss, fuck soulless corporate tech bros, insert webpunk by Violet Pony. Bye!
RAR. XD. D. 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 D.